Hey guys, my name is Epic Cairo and I'm going to give you a beginning guide to Warframe as well as a bunch of other Warframe videos, but today this is going to be my basic beginner guide to Warframe. I'm making this guide partially because I've got to mastery rank 11 or 12 and I've been told by my friends, oh, why don't you make Warframe videos, because I haven't made some videos in a while, and Warframe's a game I've really enjoyed. It's a brilliant free-to-play third-person shooter, it's not really first-person. And I just think it's all around a brilliant game, and out of a lot of free-to-play models, this game has a really good free-to-play model. I've played Heroes and Generals, PlanetSide, and their free-to-play models are a little bit iffy, for various reasons which I won't go into, but Warframe has a really good free-to-play model, and it's a really fun and addictive game, and at the moment, it is the game I've played with the most playtime. So, in this guide, I'm going to basically start off with telling you what Warframes you get at the beginning of the game, and I'll tell you a little bit about Warframes, what they are, what they do. I'm going to tell you about some weapons, and a guide on selecting your first weapons that you should go for. I'm going to explain about the GUIs and menus and all the things you'll need to know as a beginner. I'm going to tell you about the ship, what the ship does, what's on the ship, all the modules and whatnot, the missions and how the game works, and then about resources and crafting. And there will be in that order, and I'll leave links in the description to the points in the video where those sections will start. So hopefully when you've watched this video, you can just jump right in and play the game and know pretty much what you're doing, pretty hands down. And, you know, hopefully I'll keep it simple so you won't need to have to look back at things and you'll just be able to remember what I've said, basically. Okay, so ignoring my horribly long mastery list of Warframes, considering I've mastered pretty much every Warframe apart from 2, when you start the game you'll be presented with a choice of 3 Warframes. The first on this list is Excalibur. So, Warframes in a nutshell, they're basically super suits, and you're a space ninja, in space, doing space ninja stuff. Every Warframe has a health stat, a shield stat, and an armor stat. And these stats are basically what your mods work on. Mods are things that enhance the base stats and abilities of Warframes. Every Warframe has 4 special abilities, and every Warframe is dynamic, so you can use it for any playstyle you like. However, some Warframes tend to excel at certain playstyles, so that's worth considering. So the first Warframe on the list is Excalibur. Excalibur is a really good, balanced Warframe, and generally the most chosen Warframe at the beginning of the game. He has 100 health, 100 shields, 225 armor, and 100 power. Power is basically how much damage your Warframe abilities do, among other things. His first ability is Slash Dash. Now this has been reworked in 2.0, since originally it was just a straight line cutting everyone in half. In this it has become ever so slightly more badass. Slash Dash now dashes between different enemies, which I think is absolutely epic as hell because I have a thing for animations and special effects. So he'll slash to one enemy, cut him in half, slash to another, uppercut, slash to another, slice his head off, whatever. He'll keep slicing between enemies, and if they're all in close proximity, this ability will work on 6 to 8 enemies. His next ability is Radial Blind. Radial Blind is an amazing survivability move, because survivability is quite important in Warframe when you're being hoarded by hundreds of enemies. Survivability can be the difference between you going down and the difference between you escaping to regenerate your shields. Radial Blind basically blinds your enemies, and if you use power duration, it can last for up to 20 seconds, which is an amazing way to escape enemies without dying. When enemies are stunned by Radial Blind, you can do critical damage, which does triple or double damage depending on your multiplier on your weapons, on top of the base critical damage of the weapon, so it's like a crit, if that makes any sense. Radial Javelin is a really strong move, as it used to be Excalibur's ultimate move. The 4th ability is always more powerful than the others, and Radial Javelin used to be his ultimate. I think the only difference they did when they nerfed it and made it a regular move was they made it so it only launches 10 javelins. I'm not sure. I know each javelin can still hit multiple enemies, but I'm not sure whether every enemy is hit by a javelin. I think they just brought it down to 10, but I'm not entirely sure on that. Exalted Blade is another badass move that they added for Excalibur. They basically summon a Sword of Light that does ridiculous damage, something about 750 per swing, but the reason this is so good is it scales with all of the other moves, so his Slash Dash, Radial Javelin are both enhanced by the Exalted Blade. Excalibur is a really well balanced Warframe and a safe bet for you to go with if you want to have a balanced Warframe with lots of choice of what you can do. He can work as a melee and a range frame very effectively, and he's just good in all situations as an all-rounder. The next Warframe you can start off as is Mag. Now, Mag is another really cool Warframe. She's a little bit more specific, and maybe she's a bit more of a support frame in my opinion. She doesn't have quite as much outright damage as Excalibur, but she's nevertheless a very cool Warframe to play. All Warframes have their own unique abilities or sort of theme. And Mag, as you can guess, controls magnetism. She has 75 health and 150 shields. That gives her slightly more shields and slightly less health than Excalibur. She doesn't have as much armor, and her power is obviously 100, but I think her Warframes might have 100 power. Her first ability is a pull. Pull basically pulls enemies towards you. It can affect more than one enemy, and it does a nice lump sum of damage, especially at the beginning of the game if you modded towards this. Pull is a very effective move at disorganizing enemies. Crowd control is very important in Warframe because it basically means they're not shooting you. And if they're not shooting you and you're shooting them, they generally tend to die. Especially when it comes to late game when you've got good weapons, they will be dying in one hit usually, even with, you know, normal machine guns or whatever. Unless you get to the more advanced enemies. But we're talking about basic enemies here. Paul can do quite a good bit of damage, and if you buff her with ability power, power strength, she basically can be quite a force to be reckoned with. However, mainly it is a crowd control move when it comes to the late game, as obviously very high level enemies, they can become higher level than the actual Warframe limit, so they become level 40, 45, this is pretty crazy. Shield Pulverize restores or depletes shields, basically. It's very effective against Corpus or any other shielded unit, and it's extremely useful towards allies, because allies have their shields completely restored, and if you've got an ally with a lot of shielding, maybe 1,000 shields, it can be extremely useful when it can instantly save their life. Bullet Attractor. Bullet Attractor is another cool ability that I would mainly say is useful for bosses or very tanky enemies such as bombarders or heavy gunners early game when you might need quite a lot of bullets to kill them. It also attracts enemy bullets if I feel, I think that is true, yeah. So, yeah, if it attracts enemy bullets too, that's just, you know, saving you ammo in the long run. If you're doing survival, ammo can be quite scarce on certain weapon types. And also, it detonates when the unit dies, dealing damage to all other enemies around them. Crush. Warframe has this slight thing where you're scrolling, and sometimes it'll scroll up if you're scrolling down. It's just a random side note. I always think about this when I look at it, because it does my head in slightly. But anyway, Crush. Crush magnetizes the bones of nearby enemies and causes them to collapse in upon themselves. Basically, I have a thing for moves with animations, good animations. And Warframe's amazing for their particle effects, and this move here is a beautiful animation. You lift people up into the ground, and then they just implode in on themselves, and it looks very cool. There's lots of particles. And, yeah, basically, it does a hell of a lot of damage. It'll insta-kill most enemies, especially if you've modded power. Even late game, it'll slaughter most enemies that you come across. So you see, Mag has a couple of crowd control moves, she has a couple of okay damage moves, and her ult is a very good damage move. But she's a little bit more utility than Excalibur. While Excalibur is all-round damage with an escape, basically. But even the escape causes more damage. So, so far between utility and support are the main two frames here. Now, Excalibur's also a sort of close range sort of frame. I'll say that before we move on to the last frame, because the last beginning frame is Volt. Now, Volt is a very, very cool Warframe who controls electricity. Volt was actually my first Warframe. However, I didn't actually start with Volt when I first played the game, as there used to be a Warframe called Loki, which was the starting frame, which is no longer the starting frame, as it was replaced by Volt. So Volt has the ability to manipulate electricity. He has 100 health, 100 shields, 15 armor, which is nothing, and 100 power. His first ability is Shock. Now, Volt is a very good alternative for players who like to focus around their Warframes and abilities rather than gunplay. Shock is basically a lightning bolt. However, it's very cool because when you use Shock, it'll affect a certain enemy, it'll stun them for a certain amount of time. Stunning is very useful in this game as crowd control, because it means they're not shooting you and you're shooting them, especially with explosive weapons or area of effect weapons. While it is a single target projectile and you must hit the target, it also zaps between other targets, which is an amazing ability, as it zaps up to 5 or 6 enemies, which can be very good for distracting them and getting away, and generally for finishing them off as well. So, the next is Speed. Now, this is an ability that is not used as often, because I prefer to minimize power duration and maximize power damage with Shock, as I'm a very good damage dealer with these Warframes. Speed basically makes him run extremely fast, probably about twice the speed of normal, and on top of that increases his attack speed, which is the crazy part. Like, one day I may make a video showing you my Obex build, which is a close combat weapon, fists. If I use it with Volt, my attack speed is, you can't even see my fists. I'm dealing like 10 attacks a second, and each one's doing like 1,000 damage, so it's pretty insane. And the next one on the list is the Electric Shield. This is a very, very, very cool ability. Electric Shield basically is a massive shield of electricity that blocks all projectiles. Explosives, bullets, energy, everything is blocked by this shield. I'm not sure whether this is the effect anymore, but before, when you would shoot through the shield, it'll also deal electrical damage. It may still do this, but I'm not entirely sure. I haven't verified this, but I think it will do. And that used to be a huge buff to your damage output. If you had like a machine gun, heavy machine gun on boss units or bosses, it would significantly increase your damage. The last ability of Volt's a very unique and cool ability called Overload. Overload basically lets out an electromagnetic field that overloads every single electronic device in the room, whether it's lights, doors, alarms, traps, everything. It overloads and explodes, and all other electronics will deal damage, electrical damage, to the enemies within the area, and it has quite a large radius of effect. And obviously, all the abilities of Warframes can be affected by the stats of those abilities, which I'll go into say later. But as I said, Volt is a very good long-range combat frame. Of course, he can play close combat too, but he is mainly a long or sort of mid-range combat frame. And he's very good for players who wish to have an alternative to just this traditional gunplay. Right. The next thing I'm going to talk about is your starting weapons. So in Warframe, there are a whole load of weapons. And hopefully on this list, yeah, these are just the weapons that I've mastered personally. So there is a hell of a lot of them. And right, so on this weapon list, you'll want to go for... When you've started the game, you'll start with a Mark 1 weapon. And to be blunt with you, Mark 1 weapons are crap, and you want to look to get rid of them as soon as possible. My first new weapon after I started the game was the Kronos, which is basically an advanced version of the starting sword. And it's a nice sword, and obviously all weapons have these stats. Impact, puncture, and slash. It's good to have a mixture of these stats within your 3 weapons. And you want to, some people like to choose a certain type. As I said, with weapons that are melee, I tend to go with slash or impact weapons, mainly slash though. With guns, I tend to go with puncture because I use bows and snipers, or impact as well. And with my secondary weapons, I tend to use impact again. Pistols tend to be impact. Right, out of these weapons, spin attacks, so these are just normal attacks and stuff. Channeling. Channeling is a mode where you can go into like a, basically let's call it Super Saiyan mode. I'll call it Super Saiyan mode. And you basically do an increased damage of sometimes 1.5, 2.6, whatever it may be. You will do extra damage with your weapon, but it will drain your energy. The cost is the energy it does per swing. 5 is quite considerable, so if you plan on using channeling mode, you may wish to improve your channeling efficiency to get it down to 1. It's always worth it. It's better with heavier weapons. As the cost is done per hit of your weapon, you want to get that cost down, because with a heavier weapon, you're doing more damage with less hits. So with heavier weapons, channeling efficiency is definitely a build you can go with. Attack speed is the amount of swings it does per second. And crit chance is basically, obviously, its chance to crit. And the crit damage is the crit damage. You do not want to build crit chance unless you have a crit chance of at least 15%. Status is the effect that you can put elemental damage on people, as you can equip your weapons with fire, ice, electricity, and toxin damage. And each of those elemental effects can be combined to create a better elemental effect. Anyway, in terms of your choice for starting weapons, looking at primary weapons, you have a whole array of weapons here. You have bow staffs, you have swords, you have dual swords. This is a sword, this is a two-handed sword. You have fists, you have sparring weapons, which are your hands and feet in effect. You have spears and things like that. You have a whole bunch of weapons, and you're going to want to choose something quite early on to look for. When you are on the marketplace, you can choose to buy a blueprint, and then you'll be able to make that weapon. Okay, so looking at the market here, you're going to have to get acquainted with it later, but I might as well give you an introduction to it now. When you look at the weapons here, it will come up with primary on the left, secondary in the middle, and melee on the right. As a free-to-play player, you're going to want to look at this primary blueprints thing. If you look at the primary weapons generally, they'll all be bought with the in-game currency that is known as platinum. Platinum is bought with real-life money, and I'll probably give you a separate guide on how to use that all together, as it is generally not a smart move to buy these weapons outright with platinum, as there are far more worthy causes to spend your platinum on. Primary weapon blueprints. You cannot buy every weapon in the game with blueprints. However, the majority of good starting weapons you will get as an option here. Common options for starting players. I'll give you some advice here that you may wish to go with. I haven't got one myself, but I've been playing a very long time. I've just not come around to it, as I obviously collect prime weapons now. Prime weapons are upgraded versions, which you have to earn as a free-to-play player or a pay-to-play player. You cannot buy prime stuff outright. But the Boltor is a very popular first weapon. It fires slow, heavy bolts and has a very high damage output for a rifle. It can also pin enemies to walls, which is a very fun feature. Generally, I'm a fan of this feature. Now, Crafting requirements. All weapons have a crafting requirement. They will involve some credits, which is not usually that much. 25,000 is not a lot when you get into the game, guys. Neurodes, alloy plates, salvage, and polymer bundles. All resources have a rarity. Obviously, the ones where I have shitloads here, that's going to be quite a common resource. While neuroids are obviously a bit more uncommon, as I've only got 3 at the moment, while I have 500,000 alloy plate. So the bolter is a very good rifle if you like heavier weapons, but you still like your traditional assault rifle. There are obviously heavy machine guns, one or more, but the Burstron is basically, I'll say, your M16. While the Tiburon's actually your M16, this is your starting M16. It is a very nice gun, and I believe it has a very nice status chance as well. It's got a nice 10% status chance, and it's just generally quite a nice all-rounder. It has, as I said, impact, puncture, and slash, and as I said, it's very nicely moddable. You can mod it for any of these. You can specialize in one of the stats or whatever, really. It's quite nice. And as I said, Burstron is a very nice gun if you're a beginner as well. Now, a lot of people like the bows. One of the starting weapons in this game is the Mark I Paris, which down here is the actual Paris. Now, when you're choosing an actual bow to go with, you're going to want to be careful here because they are very different. Now, the Paris focuses on puncture damage, and it's the original bow of the game. However, if you prefer impact damage, you may prefer the Cernos. The Cernos is, again, a very, very, very nice bow, and it gives a nice impact. It has a very nice look as well compared to the Paris. I would go with the Cernos if I were you, if you like impact. The impact damage in this game also knocks back enemies. It has a very cool ragdoll effect as well. So, yeah, this works better with shielded enemies than the Paris, which works better on flesh. I believe there might be another starting bow down here, but there is not. Oh, well. Now, you have some other very nice weapons here. The Grakata is a flame... Oh, no, this is the machine gun, sorry. It looks very much like a flamethrower you get later in the game. So this is a heavy machine gun. If you wish to go with a heavy machine gun, this could be a good one for you to start with. So it's a bit heavier than the others. It has a very, very, very good status chance and a very good crit chance. So if you want to go for crit chance and status chance, this is the weapon for you, I would say. And finally, I will say another recommended starting one. You've got the Vectis as a sniper, which I'll quickly go into. If you want to go for a sniper, they don't kill as many enemies because they're one shot, obviously. But enemies, it's better to go with a machine gun that you can mow enemies down with. This is, again, will be for supporting frames. Someone who plays mag or a supporting frame may find this very good because of the high damage. You can take down heavily armored, better units. I'd say the same for bows, really. But generally, it's better to go with a, a machine gun. So you may wish to go for the Latron, is a one-shot rifle. Obviously got good stats here, very good puncture damage. And it's quite a nice gun there. It also builds into the Tiburon later, which is an amazing 3-shot burst gun. There are other weapons here, such as the Heck. The Heck is a shotgun, if you wish to start with a shotgun. There are many types of weapon in this game. It's a very good shotgun, actually. As I said, you've got shotguns, you've got rifles, you've got 3-shot burst rifles, 1-shot burst rifles. You have all sorts of weapons, and you've even got flak launchers here. The Dracoon is a flak gun, basically. Anyway, we will move on to secondary weapons. You've seen the idea. You want to choose a weapon that you think you really will enjoy using. Don't look at what's the best weapon, as all weapons can be played very effectively, especially early game. Do what you enjoy playing and what you enjoy the feel of. Going on to secondary weapons, my all-time favourite is the Aklex, and you can get this straight away. It's a beautiful dual pistols. They're like dual magnums in effect. They're very nice. You have to get 2 Lex to build it, which can be a bit of a pain, but scrolling up, what is this? You need 2 Lex to build it, but it is an extremely nice secondary weapon, and even I use it late game. It is my main secondary weapon. You've also got the Ak Bolto and the Ak Furus and all sorts of dual pistols here. The Ak Zinni is an extremely fast, rapid-fire pistol, and they've got, as I said, machine pistol basically in effect. The Akvasto is basically like, I don't know, how would you describe it, Wild West pistols or something. The Angstrom's a very nice weapon. It's basically a missile launcher, and it's at 425 flat blast damage is incredible when you've modded it with explosive damage. Gamma Core is also extremely popular. It's basically a laser that does insane damage. You may not wish to use a bow as your primary, but you may wish to have one as your secondary, as they're also silenced, and silenced weapons can take enemies out without being alerted. And the Ballistica could be very useful to that ends. So, as I said, it's a crossbow, very good damage, very good puncture damage. And then again, you may have a single pistol you may prefer. You may have kunai or shuriken, which are again a very fun element. Also, these Spira are a new sort of shurikens. They could be quite interesting. I haven't bought them myself. The Bronco is a shotgun pistol in effect. And the Sonicore basically launches a ball of Sonic that explodes instead of flying with a hilarious ragdoll effect. So it's very good as a crowd control move. Crowd control is very important in this game, and you want to have some crowd control of some form, as it's your only way of surviving and escaping. By far, melee is the most popular thing to do in this game. People like their melee, and there are a lot of melee weapons. This is just on the blueprints list. There's probably double this in the actual list of things you can use. We've got heavy hammers, we've got fists, we've got whips, we've got bow staffs, we've got dual swords and daggers, we have dual scythes, we have dual axes, we have big swords, we have little swords. What's the little sword? It's the normal long sword, I suppose. You have axes of death, you have crazy amounts of weapons. You just want to choose something that suits you the most. I personally am quite favourable to bow staffs and swords. The Nikana is a favourite among all players. Everyone goes, oh, let's have the Nikana because outright it's supposedly the best damage weapon in the game, but it's not actually that good. The damage isn't that god tier, honestly. You can make anything as good as each other, in my opinion. You just have to mod it correctly and know what you're doing. And if you're good with something naturally, it'll be better than doing something you're not good with, but you want to get the damage out of. As you've even got chainsaw fists here and nunchucks. Nunchucks are quite new, but they're very cool. They do electricity damage. It's something you might want to look into. It would be hard to get because the Argon Crystals. Argon Crystals are endgame resources, but just look for the resources generally. And anything that's a safe bet, like a bow, it's got very simple resources. An Orokin Cell, Salvage, Ferrite, and Alloy Plate. Maybe, can you avoid Orokin Cells on these things? Yeah, not everything has an Orokin Cell. See, these are fists. You could build them outright, practically. And there's other nice weapons as well, as I said. We've got the Karma's a nice scythe. I don't think you need... Neural sensors are quite expensive, so the better weapons tend to have something that's difficult. Like in that case, it's a neural sensor. Orthos is a very good weapon, generally. Yeah, that's a nice one to go for. Morphix isn't too hard to get. You can get it on Mars, like 5 a run, quite easily. And these are all common resources. So yeah, you want to choose weapons that you will enjoy playing. Considering with melee weapons, you've also got these things called stance mods, and stance mods completely change the way they play. They change their combos, they change the way they play completely. Like with my fists, I like to go bam, 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 just punch the shit out of things. There is a stance mod that basically makes it do capoeira, which is like the martial art where you've got the slaves dancing and they mask it as dance, so... Hopefully that has given you a really good insight into the different types of weapons and how damage works. I would go into it in more detail later, but I just want to give you a general oversight into weapons, what types of weapons there are, and what sort of things you could go with at the beginning. I said there's practically an infinite list. Well, it's not infinite, but there's a lot of combinations that you could use. And to your own, play style, they can all be used differently. And I think that's a very cool feature of Warframe. And you can mod them all differently to work in different ways, whether you want it to be damage or crowd control. Lastly, I'm going to look at the GUI. I'm using my keyboard and mouse to move around. This is awkward because I use a controller. It's probably worth noting. Anyone who plays this game, I would very much encourage you to use a controller. I use the controllers, the keyboard and mouse when I'm on the menus like this, but I very much prefer controllers. So first off, you've got this thing here, which is syndicates. You don't really need to bother with these at the beginning, but there are 6 syndicates within the game. And you can side with either one of them, and either one of them have their own benefits and ideologies. You may wish to go with them because you agree with their ideologies, or you may wish to get a certain weapon, such as if you want the epic laser, which everyone tends to use. The Cephalon Suda is my main group that use that, but that's not the reason I did it. I just like their ideologies, honestly. You got the parent sequence, have an epic dual pistols, energy pistols you can get at the end, and all of them have their own special weapon at the end as well, so... Next thing you have to become very acquainted with is the mission terminal. There are all these different planets, which may not appear for you at the beginning, but I think I've unlocked all the planets now. And, well, I must have done. But, basically, you'll be starting off on Mercury, and, if you want just a random piece of advice, it's worth just doing a Mercury Survival or a Mercury Defense to rack up the XP to level 10 at the beginning, because that will allow you to get all your abilities and start modding your Warframe. And that's always a very useful thing to do. Also, when you've decided, you may wish to decide to stick with your starting frame, or you may wish to decide to go for another frame you really want to go for. And in that case, I'll just go to the market, look at all the frames, and see what you want. Then Google how you can get that frame. A lot of frames can be really easy. Every world has a boss, and every boss drops a frame part. For example, Venus, I believe it is. There you go. Venus has the Jackal. Jackal is how you get Rhino. Rhino's a very good defensive frame. He's practically immortal. And if you want Rhino, just go to Venus and do that boss until you get the parts for him. As I said, and on these planets, you have different types of missions. You have a survival, which is, in a nutshell, well, I'll go through a whole mission and video types later. Survival's basically surviving, obviously. Defending's defending an objective. Capture's capturing a VIP. Mobile defense is multiple defense areas you have to defend. Exterminate is killing people, obviously. Sabotage is blowing up a drill shaft or something. Interception is intercepting some information, so you have to go and get these points and hold them to intercept something. Spy is a stealth mission, extremely fun if you like that stealthy area of it, and being literally a space ninja, getting through undetected without setting off the alarms. And I said, it's very, very fun, lots of different game modes, and you may enjoy a certain thing over others. Though generally, well, no, I'll go into a different video on leveling up and stuff like that later. Okay, so another thing you'll look at here, this is your codex. You can collect information on different things, whether it's mods, warframes, weapons, all of that will appear here. And I'll come into detail on that later. I don't know what oddities, I haven't looked at that. Oh, undiscovered, there's only one. That's exciting. Okay, so when you begin the game, your ship modules will not actually be built, by the way. You have to go through missions to do them. One might be on Mercury, but it should come up with these symbols here. There'll be one which indicates you've got a part to look for here. And these are basically tutorial missions. There'll be one on Mercury, probably a bunch on Earth. I haven't done them myself because I started playing so long ago that the tutorial parts were not a thing back in those days. In fact, hell, they didn't even have abilities. They had ability mods. It was so weird. This is your Kubrau thing, which basically is a pet dog. I would stay away from them. They're extremely high maintenance unless you're a pay-to-play player. But you can get these things called Sentinels as a free-to-play player, which are very cool. This is my Sentinel here. He's a very friendly little guy. I got him to look cool. I'm thinking of making some videos on how to make your Warframes look cool, as I do think my Warframes look rather cool. But, as we can go into detail on that later. The Foundry is where you build your shit. So when you buy your blueprints, after you've done your tutorial and got the Foundry built, this is where everything will appear. I obviously have a monumental amount of Foundry parts. Some of my favourite weapons of all time. So a Blueprint Pro, the Venka, some claws, my favourite weapon most likely. The Tenno, what I'm building next, hopefully. Same with Prime, something I'm working on, Prime weapons. But yeah, basically you have all your stuff here. And let's say, if we go with the Acrid here, if you want the Acrid or whatever weapon, your blueprint will appear here and it'll tell you what you need. And when you've got it, it will say you have a credit time and how long it'll take to build. This is another way of them making money, but it's perfectly fair. You may wait a day to get your weapon, but someone else could be paying for it to have it quicker. And to wait a day is not a big thing. It's really not. I would rather wait than pay. Do you know what I mean? And it's not grind in that element. Nobody can grind for resources. I mean, you can pay for resources, but it's so expensive. Nobody would do it. When you get your platinum, you do not go on the market and go, let's go buy some plastids for a weapon. You do not do that because it is too expensive to be worth bothering with. And as I said, you'll just build your stuff there, and that's how it'll go pretty much. You do that with weapons, Warframes. With Warframes, it's subtly different. I'll go down to one where I've got parts for. Here we go. Ember Prime. Ember Prime's obviously Ember, the Fire Warframe. I'm not going to go into detail on her now, but every Warframe is a helmet, a systems, and a chassis to build her. Now, I have all three parts to build her again, but I don't have the blueprint. You'll have a blueprint, which basically, to begin with, you build the helmet, prime, and chassis. That will take 12 hours. And when they're done, you click the blueprint, and you need the three parts for the blueprint. So it's like this, but they'll have helmet, chassis, systems. And then it'll take 3 days to build your Warframe, which sounds like a long time, but for me, I go to college 3 days a week where I don't have time to play video games, so those 3 days are ideal for me to build a new Warframe. Anyway, that's the gist on building your Warframes and your weapons. I've explained in missions in a, well, vague detail, I suppose. And going back onto the resources thing, every planet here has resources. You'll see here, from left to right are the most, the main resources that planet has. And the first here is Morphix, then you've got Ferrite, you've got, if you click on it, it'll tell you on the side, Polymer Bundles and Detonite Amples. They all have their own unique icons to help you tell them apart. Well, Venus has Alloy Plate, Polymer Bundles, Circuits, Field Run Samples, Earth, Ferrite, Rubido, Neuroids, and Detonite Amples. And every resource has their own unique thing. And sometimes as you go up the list, you have rarer resources. Like Gallium is found on Mars. It's extremely difficult to farm. I was farming for a few hours yesterday to get like 6. Uranus also has Gallium, but I think it's better to do it on Mars because it's on the same slot. I don't think it makes much difference, honestly, because it's the same slot. And as you go up this list, you'll find much harder stuff. Like on Ceres, you've got these things called Orokin cells, which are they're quite rare. Especially when you're building prime parts, they take 10 apiece. And then you've got the Void, where you get these things called Argon crystals, which are extremely rare and difficult to find. Void missions, you have to have a specific key to do the mission. The 13 here is the amount of keys I have for that mission. And as I said, that's how resource farming goes. And the way Warframe plays is you basically wanted to get new frames, get new weapons, and just enjoy the gameplay. On a lot of games like World of Tanks, War Thunder, whatever, people say, how do you get to rank 5? How do you get to rank 10 as fast as possible? How do you grind the XP? And the answer they give you sometimes is, just play the game and enjoy the game. And I can't do it because I do not enjoy the game enough to care, honestly. But with Warframe, I enjoy that grind. They call it a grind. I call it fun. I call it getting the resources for a new weapon. And the suspense for getting that new weapon. And I genuinely enjoy that. And when I get the weapon, it's really, really rewarding. And the thing I get for it that I really enjoy is, customizing that weapon, which I'll come on to later. Here are your mods. You'll get mods just doing missions. In your first exterminate, if you do a survival or a defense, you will get a handful of nice mods. You'll probably get a very standard vitality mod, which I have one upgraded, but and it gives you health. And the way mods work is you'll click it, you can upgrade it by using fusion, and by doing that you can fuse it with these things called fusion coils, or you can fuse it with other mods. I said some mods are so common, like pressure point or pistol gunner, that I've got 60 or 70 of them. That's after deleting them time and time again. And you'll click them, and to see at the beginning it'll say you've got plus 40 health. Shove on all these mods here, it'll level it up a bit, and you have plus 160% health, which is really, really good. And mods have become in rarity. You've got bronze mods, easy as hell to get. Silver mods, they're pretty common, and gold mods, which are the ones you wish to strive for. That's a very good shotgun mod, by the way, if anyone likes shotguns. House Chamber, and you can Google mods. If you Google a list of mods, it will come up with, and you can just look through them to see what you want. Other very good mods are Streamline, Vigor's an incredibly good mod, Serration is essential. What you want to look out for as an early player is mods have different levels of levels. See, Vigor here has 5 level up slots, while Serration has 10. And it will take you far too much effort to get that to rank 10 early game. You do not want to do that. You want to focus on the mods that have 5 slots to begin with. You might want to get a rank 10 mod but level it up to 5, but you want to stop around there. You don't want to keep sweating going, oh my god, I've got to get it to rank 10, because it'll make you very, very sad that you can use 100 fusion cores and it will do nothing. As I said, this reflex guard mod I got to rank 6 before, and I just couldn't be bothered to keep leveling it. So mods are important. They do all sorts of different things, which increase your damage, shields, and these are just Warframe mods. You've got weapon mods that increase your weapons damage, and if we go, as I said, we got Serration, increases the damage generally for secondary weapons, for rifles in particular. As you got rifles, shotguns, you'll find for pistols for secondaries in that. Even weapons that don't look like pistols, they will all use pistol damage mods, which is a little bit weird here. But yeah, you've got all sorts of different mods here, and as I said, you can just mod your weapon however you like. It's generally good to put a bit of damage on them at the beginning, so get a Hornet Strike, or with your melee weapon, get a pressure point mod. Pressure points are really easy to get, and just max that up, and you can use melee if you've got nothing else maxed. It's only a max 5, which gives it a lot of damage, which is very useful. And I said, there are all sorts of mods you can mod your weapons with, and I'll do separate videos at some point if you ask me to, on modding of weapons and how you should mod specific types of weapons, which can be extremely useful. The last thing I'm going to look at in detail that you need to know about is the arsenal, and that's where it's your inventory. You're fitting yourself out. On the menu here, it's just navigation's a quick way to get to menus. Equipment's looking at your stuff all together. It's just ways of getting to stuff usually, like, this is your foundry, which is what you're about to, the thing I've showed you for building. Arsenal's how to equip stuff. You don't have to do it this way. The only thing you really need to know here is the communication tab, as this is where you add your friends. So if you wish to add your friends, you go in here, you click online, you click add friend. And obviously the inbox and clan, which is you'll get into later. There may be a separate video on clans. But anyway, on the arsenal here, this is where you equip your Warframes. You can equip your Warframe here, and I said I've got a whole arsenal of Warframes here. So what it says, there's a lot that I haven't got. Most of these are just because I have the Prime version, like Volt Prime, Nyx Prime, Nag Prime, Lucky Prime, Prime. So we'll stick with Frost here. Frost is my main Warframe for any of you guys who wish to know that. Upgrading the Warframe. Frost is a very tanky frame, has amazing shield capability. People say to use a slot that agrees with it. This one does not, but I like Energy Siphon quite a lot myself, so I use it. It's very useful for soloing, as you will never run out of energy. Now, Flow increases your max energy, which if you're an ability-based player, you like to use your abilities, that's very useful. Streamline, again, is essential for that because it reduces the cost of your abilities. And Fleeting Expertise is a very hard mod to get that does the same, but it decreases their duration. However, for Frost, this has no downside, as none of his abilities revolve on duration anymore, apart from his one. His Ice Dome used to be, but now it has a health system, and when it's killed, it's killed. So giving it minus duration is no downside at all. Vigor gives health and shields. Frost has a meaty set of shields. Its shields are over 1,000 with this setup, which is quite a lot. And Redirection, again, is a bit more shielding. Stretch increases the range, which makes my bubble massive. Chilling Globe is a special augment you can get through the Syndicate system for a Warframe. It's for Frost, this one. And every Warframe has 2 or 3 of these for them specifically. And this one freezes enemies if they go inside of it. And this one increases power damage. So that's basically modding my Warframe here. But, you know, you may wish to, if you're a damage Warframe, you may wish to put Intensify, which makes your Warframe more damaging. And obviously you can look where to get these mods. You know what they're doing if you're looking through this video. You may see in this video, this is very clever by the way if you do. Oh, I like that mod. You may then write it down and go on Google and see where to get it. And then you can get some nice mods early game because you know where you're looking. And there's all sorts of mods. The last of a mod I never mentioned because it's of no consequence to new players unless you want to sweat this game out and get 50 hours playtime in no time, is the primed mods. Prime mods you can only get on the market or from this trader dude who comes every 2 weeks, and the chance of having a prime mod is pretty low. However, a secret thing here, I have no interest in prime mods. I can't be bothered to mod them myself, so if anyone wishes to buy them, I'd have no problem just pretty much giving them away pretty cheap. But anyway, next you have your weapon mods equally. For my shotgun here, this thing is a god-tier shotgun. But when you fire it, it looks like people are removed from existence. They just disappear. They cease to exist. And I've given this weapon blast damage, which... yeah, we're not going to go into detail here, but it's ridiculous. And the impact makes them disappear, basically, with the blast. I've given multi-shot, which gives them more than 1 bullet per pellet. Punch through, you can punch through walls. Amazing when they're behind cover, like, you can't shoot me, and I'm like, yes I can. Cold damage, if you combine these damage types, instead I've combined cold and heat, which makes blast damage. And that's what it does there. And the further they are, going this way, is the way they'll combine. So the toxic's obviously left over because it's in the last slot. So that's how you combine which order you wish to have them fuse in. And obviously I've given status chance because I like to have my blast damage proc, which have an 84% status chance that's outright damage and blast and multi-shots. Multi-shots basically timesing your damage by 2 because you've got twice as many pellets. As I said, you've got the same with pistols here. I'm working on these shotguns, but if I look at my Aklex here, you see again, I've got very nice pistols, all modded out. And you said you've got all these mods to do things, and you want to do it the way you want to do it. This is a weapon I'm just working on leveling. Anyway, the last thing that's worth looking at for these weapons is the appearance. Appearances is something I absolutely love. These are your, if you look on the abilities tab here, it shows you how much your abilities do with these mods equipped. As I said, my damage is a lot higher, my area is a lot higher, everything is blue, only those 2 things are red. Avalanche, I didn't even know how to duration to be honest. I think it's the freeze, it lasts for a while, which is good for me because it does the damage quicker, and my ability is powerful enough to kill them instantly, so even again, that's not even enough. Now, looking at appearance, this is a very, 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 I cannot say enough varies, cool part of Warframe. You've got color schemes, which I'm going to probably do some videos on color schemes, basically, in a nutshell, because I think my Warframes look pretty cool, and some people look like fucking parrots. But showing these color schemes, as I said, you can customize any aspect of your Warframe color scheme, and I said, as a free-to-play player, you will only get these beginning color schemes here to begin with and the saturated one, but you know, I'll talk about color schemes and that later. But for now, you can give any sort of, you know, you can still make some very cool looking Warframes, and if I go on a Warframe I don't really care too much about, you can make some very cool looking Warframes with those color schemes, even though, you know, you may not plan on ever. As I said, this is just pretty much a starting color scheme, I believe. I said you can still make your Warframe look pretty damn cool without using these advanced color schemes. Use saturated, get a bit of black in there. Secondary, I'll do some separate videos on color schemes and cool colors because I think I could do those pretty well, as I always think I've had a pretty good sort of style for colors. So then we could put that in you don't want to clash too many colours is generally a good tip here. You want to sort of have them work pretty well together. Yeah, we'll have a green theme here. And you may wish to have some silver. And then on the energy color, you may wish to have, as I said, energy color. This is a very, 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 very cool part of Warframe. Energy color, what you base your energy on. See these green little bings on our head? That's based on the color, and you can change this. Now, you know what else this changes that I find very cool? Your abilities. Your abilities change color depending on the color you are using, and I think that is an extremely cool ability, and it works the same when you're a weapons energy color. The slash of the weapons, the way the enemies die, everything is based on that color, and that is extremely cool. But this is not a color tutorial, so we're going to skip this. But you can see with the basic colors, you can make some cool looking stuff. And that is pretty much everything I can tell you guys on Warframe, and I hope this has helped. And you won't really have loaders and that at the beginning, but anyway, I hope this has helped you, and I hope you guys can now jump right in the game and say, I want this, I want that, and I hope you know where to go to see what you want in terms of your weapons and your Warframes, and I hope you know where you can look for these things. I'm going to put in the description links to different sections of this video. I will put links to a recruitment thing in the game itself, so if you want to have a recruitment thing, you can have a bonus for 7 days, like a booster. I will also put a link to the Wikipedia page for Warframe, so you can look at all the Warframes if you wish to be one of those people to decide, I want that Warframe. I will put a link to the Wikipedia page so you can look at every single Warframe in the game. And that's also, you could do it on the market as well, but on the Wikipedia they give you advice on maxing certain stats and all the, you know, if you really want to get into it and, you know, max certain things and see good builds, that's where the wiki will help you out. And I'll give you some other useful tips in the description. Thank you for watching, guys. Please remember to leave a like if you like this video. If you have any other things in Warframe you'd like to see, like weapon builds, whether you want more cosmetic appearances, anything like that, make sure to let me know, and I'll most certainly get to it as soon as possible. Any combat guides or build guides or any gameplay guides, you know, how to do well with certain Warframes, anything like that, and I will prioritize those things. Thank you for watching, and if you like the video, remember to subscribe. There will be more Warframe things very soon, and I will see you guys in the next one.